pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we need a motion to approve the minutes, committee minutes dated August 10th, 2022. Moved by Commissioner Spiz, second by Commissioner Markham. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Now we have approval of the agenda. I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for, let's say, August 24th, 2020.
Yes, sir, yeah. Moved by Commissioner Spiz, seconded by Commissioner Markham. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. All right, now we'll move on to public comment. Anybody from the public looking to speak on any of the agenda items on the agenda for the first public comment? Anyone? Seeing none, call public comment closed. Now we'll move to the regular agenda. The first item on the regular agenda is Economic Development Resolution Assessment of American Rescue Plan Act, Local Fiscal Recovery Funds for Project Diamond Distribution Independent and Algae Manufacturing on Demand Phase Number 2. Need a motion. Moved by Commissioner Spiz, seconded by Commissioner Markham. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. We ask you to speak into the mic so the people that are listening on the social media, Zoom, or live stream can hear you.
And I've got a presentation, so I'm going to swing around the side at least until questions, if
Yeah.
that's okay. Sean Carlson, Oakland County Deputy County Executive, and I'm here to present today Project Diamond Phase 2 in regards to a request for appropriations of $15 million for ARPA funds. So we've got a presentation. I will be joined by Automation Alley during the question period. Also, we have a manufacturer who received a Phase 1 3D went through Phase 1, and that's Mr. Valentine, and he's a manufacturer in Oakland County down in the Ferndale area, and I'll ask for a presentation from him to give us his insights as well. And I'm also joined by Dom Holmes in our Economic Development group. So,
welcome.
Thank you. So let me go through this presentation. I will just note real quick in regards to the resolution, and it's an oversight on my part, but we are asking for an appropriation, not an assignment. So if I want to make sure that's clear, and that's an oversight from my perspective, and I think that might be in the first now therefore be it resolved. So with that being said, let me go to the second slide here. So critical questions that we want to make sure that we were answering internally here first, and how did Project Diamond Phase 2 develop as a proposal? Why Project Diamond Phase 2 is important? Does it meet the county guidelines for ARPA funds to be distributed and appropriated to? And does it meet, more importantly, the ARPA guidelines? What SMEs, which is small manufacturing enterprises, will get 3D printers? And what is the expected impact if we move forward with this program? And what's the impact if we do not move forward with this program? So with that question, let me next slide, please. So this wasn't developed in a vacuum. It wasn't developed across the street. It was actually developed with a group of business leaders from Oakland County that came together. They were appointed on a task force by County Executive Dave Coulter back in April of 2021. And from that, we had multiple workforce groups. Ingrid Tai, our Economic Development Director, will be joining me as well. And so one of the work groups was Future Prosperity, Economic Development for Future Prosperity Work Group. And you can see the different names there. Eric Dietz from Huntington National Bank, Kate Knight from Farmington DDC, Grace Lee, Martin Manna, Chamber of Commerce, Chaldean Chamber of Commerce, and you can see the various names. Mr. Kelly, who's behind me and will be joining me for some questions as well, Alan Kerlick. So we had different members from throughout the community that looked at a number of different proposals. Next slide. The objectives that we looked at in regards to this economic development for future prosperity was making sure that we were identifying transformational projects, supporting small businesses, not corporations, but small businesses that were harmed by COVID, ensuring that investments are proportional, and that's language in the ARPA guidelines about making sure that it's a proportional response that we're making, and I'll get into that later, and investments in projects that will aid in building a more diversified and resilient economy. Next slide. We came up with these 5 proposals. Business Forward, which was approved by this committee and ultimately by this Board of Commissioners in April, and that really addressed our local economic development. We are trying to address 2 important parts of our ecosystem: our small downtown business operations, mom and pop retail stores, mom and pop restaurants, mom and pop personal services organization, and Business Forward does that. Also Project Diamond 2, which is addressing our manufacturing, which is also important in our ecosystem to make sure that we have good symbiotic balance between those 2 organizations. Placemaking in livable neighborhoods is something that we'll be looking at as well, site readiness and revolving loan fund. Today the topic is Project Diamond Phase 2. So this slide talks about the importance of Phase 2. It was an initiative that was really born out of the COVID pandemic. I've shared with this committee before. I had 2 situations when we were desperately trying to get PPE supplies, and we had community members that were contracting COVID, going to the hospital, and sometimes not making it out of the hospital. We were desperately looking for masks. I had an order of masks, Scott Guzzi did, in regards to coming from China, which was intervened. We also had FEMA intervene one of our supply chains. There's no way, and we made a commitment at that point in time, there's no way that that should be happening to Oakland County. That's got the manpower and the brain power to be more resilient. We have the manufacturing might here. We have the R&D in this neighborhood, in this community, in this county, and we need to be leveraging it. So out of that, and out of the CARES Act came the Project Diamond Phase 1. And we wanted to embrace Industry 4.0 theories and put them into practice, assist Oakland County's 2,600 manufacturing in becoming more resilient and responsive to future local and national crises, and help mitigate supply chain issues and long lead time for critical supplies, and build a sustainable platform where our small manufacturers could compete and look to reshore manufacture, look to bring jobs back to our country and back to this county. Next slide. Project Diamond Phase 1 was a success. You'll hear from Mr. Valentine here in a second in regards to, during the pandemic, we dispersed 250 3D printers. Michigan Works and Project Diamond partnered to train 23 companies and 47 workers. Project Diamond recently printed tourniquets to aid Ukrainians in regards to defense efforts. This was an example of a supply chain issue nationally that was going on, and none of the manufacturers could respond to that except for Project Diamond. And it shows the importance of this project going forward. Project Diamond Company is working currently with our National Guard to manufacture parts. Next slide. This is a quick picture of the 250. Actually, we took back 6 printers. If they're not getting used, that's part of the arrangement and agreement that Automation Alley has with our small manufacturers, is that we will take those back and redistribute them to manufacturers that are going to use them. So currently we have 244, and these are the various locations and where they're at. Next slide. Project Diamond Phase 2. Why is Phase 2 important? Phase 2 is important for a number of reasons. The manufacturing today is changing in this complex supply chain. It is projected to be at 42% of the manufacturing production by 2028. We had a major announcement by GM in January talking about Lake Orion and talking about the GM investment, biggest investment ever by General Motors made right here in Oakland County, just up the road. But what's going to happen if we don't move forward and we don't get our small mom and pops? There are more manufacturing jobs in Wayne County. There are more manufacturing jobs in Macomb. There is not more manufacturing companies. Oakland County has more than both of those counties together, but they're small mom and pops. And we are going to see a contraction in the number of auto supplies, and Project Diamond not only helps us address future crisis and be prepared for it, but it also helps our mom and pops prepare for what is about to come in regards to EV batteries, which is a reduction in the number of auto supplies. We need to help our mom and pop manufacturers start to diversify their portfolio and look at other opportunities. Continue to be strong with our auto manufacturing, but look at defense and aerospace and other industries as well. Phase 2 helps us develop a tipping point. It moves us from 244 to potentially 800 to 1,000 in regards to small manufacturers. Why Project Diamond Phase 2? Driving productivity, accelerating job and income growth, enhancing innovation, and supporting national resilience. Oakland County has, as I mentioned before, 2,626 manufacturers, $13 billion in manufacturing GDP, 66,000 jobs, and it has a multiplier impact of creating 1.8 for every job that's created in manufacturing. Next slide. The criteria. Criteria that we've set across the street in regards to these projects is it needs to be transformational. One of the things in transformational is, will the investment leverage a county strength? The county's strength is, yes, we are a leader in manufacturing. This Phase 2 will integrate this technology with our small manufacturers. It will aid and be a key driver, which in the blue-collar industry will help with job and wage growth. In the blue-collar industry, we have manufacturing, we have construction, and we have a whole warehousing and retail and wholesale trade that make up blue-collar manufacturing job, with manufacturing being the key driver. And it also powers, and I've said this many times, Oakland County, even though it is not the most populous county, it does produce over 1/5 of the state of Michigan's GDP. So it's a very productive county, and we need to maintain that production. The other thing is, we do not want to add to the operational costs outside of the ARPA window. If this project is approved, we'll not add to the operational costs to the county, and it will be completed by December 31st, 2026.
Sean?
Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you. Could you, just for the viewers, GDP, can you just say?
Gross domestic product. Thank you very
Right.
much. Yep.
There's so many acronyms these days.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
And COVID is coronavirus, in case any of the viewers
Right.
are unaware of
Right.
that.
There you go.
And 19 stands for the year that
Thank
it
you.
happened.
Appreciate that.
Just in case we have any Upers that moved to Oakland County. So ARPA criteria. We want to make sure that we're responding to the economic impacts from COVID-19. Meet the small business eligibility requirements, and make sure that it's a proportional response to the negative impacts. The next slide, this is an important slide that was important to our group that we assembled of different business leaders, and it was our conclusion that Phase 2, Project Diamond Phase 2, both supported support for small businesses. You'll see in the left column, the second row, loans and grants to mitigate financial hardship, and then efficacy of economic relief, improvement to data or technology infrastructure. Next slide. You can see in regards to our small business eligibility requirements, these are questions that we asked during CARES, but the guidance from the Department of Treasury is slightly different, and these will be the guidelines in which a small business will qualify for a grant. They need to demonstrate that there was decreased revenue or gross receipts, financial insecurity, increased costs, capacity to weather financial hardship, and challenges covering payroll, rent, or mortgage, and other operating costs. So, of course, that will be part of the application process. In proportional response to the negative impacts, Project Diamond Phase 2's initiative would provide 6.14% of the total ARPA dollars. The impact that COVID had, according to our University of Michigan Economic Outlook, was 20%. So we believe that this is well within the proportional response. Next slide. This is just a quick look to see of the 2,600 manufacturing companies in Oakland County. Our Oakland County Economic Development Group, under the leadership of Ingrid Tai and Dom Holmes, are really driving our decision-making on business decisions and understanding the companies that we're helping, where they're located, and the clusters in which they operate. And this gives us an idea of that graph, and you can see the different corridors of where manufacturing operations are located. The next slide outlines the number of manufacturers per city, village, and township. So you can see that we have an accounting of where our small manufacturing enterprises are located. This isn't a nebulous thing to us. We know exactly where they're at and the support that we're looking to drive. So this just gives you a perspective, and I'm sure you're all looking, if you can see up there, looking for your respective districts. The distribution of Project Diamond 3D printers. So you can see from a regional perspective, I tried to put these numbers together. So let me just walk you through. So the top region there, Holly, Highland, Milford, Lyon Township, South Lyon, White Lake, Commerce Township. So from north to south, the west side of Oakland County. The number of manufacturers in those communities is 146. They represent 5.6% of the 2,626 manufacturing. So 5% of the manufacturing is done in Oakland County is done in those communities. In Project Diamond, we provided 23 3D printers to companies located in that region. 9.4, the reason that's in green, you can see that's slightly above the percentage average of how many manufacturers are in that community. What we are projecting in regards to for Project Diamond Phase 2 and targeting is another 36 to 42 in that particular area. So that's the purpose of this graph, is to make sure that we have a plan. It's not just all the applications coming in. We want to make sure that we're distributing the wealth, and we're distributing the project, and making sure that we're being equitable across the county in regards to this industry. Next slide. Expected impact of Project Diamond Phase 2, addressing the supply chain issues. Additive manufacturing has the ability to create 10 to 32,000 new skilled jobs in Oakland County, and could result in a spinoff and help with a tax base of $25.1 million. 3D printing can also help us onshore as well. The impact of inaction. So in 2001, manufacturing in Oakland County declined 17.4%, and the jobs declined 38%. 97 to 2016, we saw foreign sourcing of parts for domestic car manufacturing rose 10 to 15%. Peer countries meet 80 to 90% of their domestic demand with regional production. U.S. meets only 70%. Since 1990, manufacturers with more than $1 billion in assets had seen revenues grow by more than 2,000 annually. What are we talking about here? We're talking about the bigs getting bigger. We're talking about China continually to grab more and more of the resources, and this is all about trying to reshore this. And what we see here in this is that while small and medium-sized manufacturers posted negative growth, This program is about helping them. This program is helping them to prepare for what's coming down the pike and to be agile. And these trends were mirrored with other industries, either squeeze smaller suppliers out altogether or force them into a relentless price competition. The conclusion is by adopting 3D printing, we will attract investment, create robust new markets, ensure leadership and prosperity in this Industry 4.0. Public and private sector will resolve to shore up manufacturing sector that has long been an important pillar of this economy and our nation's economy. And phase 2, combined with the technology and market opportunities, offers a rare chance to change the existing downward trajectory for manufacturing. The direct and indirect effects could boost Oakland County manufacturing GDP from $13 billion to $21.7 billion, while adding up to 32,000 jobs. Oakland County has an opportunity to help our companies with economic recovery, inclusive growth, resilience, and capabilities for the future. So that concludes the presentation. I'll swing back around here, and I'll ask that the Automation Alley team join me, as well as Mr. Valentine.
Why don't you sit?
Ingrid.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Good morning.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, so thanks for having me. My name is Rufino Valentine, president and founder of Valentine Distilling Company. We've been in business in Oakland County for a little bit over 15 years now. Just to give a little background of our company really quickly, I started this here exactly for this, to onshore more manufacturing jobs. That is our stated mission. And we are a small company. I realize we're not a tier 1 or we're not one of the big 3. We do a couple $1 million in revenue a year. We employ about 20 people. I would say that the jobs that we create are high quality jobs. Over half of my employees have been with us for more than 6 years. Out of that couple $1 million in revenue, we actually generate about $1.2 million in tax revenue for the state of Michigan. So I would say that, you know, we're exactly the kind of company that, you know, helps build a local economy. When we took part in Project Diamond, I really didn't know what I was getting into. I had no idea what additive manufacturing was. But when I received that printer, you know, very quickly I realized it was a tremendous benefit to us. We are able to, for example, we've printed hundreds of parts that we use. But one of the main things that we've been printing parts for are equipment such as our bottling lines. When our bottling line is down, we're not working, we're not producing goods, so it's very important to keep that line up and running. Oftentimes, those parts normally would come from Europe. Many of them come from Europe, and it would take weeks, usually months, and thousands of dollars to get some of these parts. I was actually able to teach myself how to use this printer and the software that you need to go along with it. And we're able to get the line back running by printing our own parts, you know, within hours or within days. So it's been a tremendous benefit for us that way. I would like to point out, too, that, you know, during the early days in the pandemic, we made probably 50,000 plus gallons of hand sanitizer, and that was bottled in the bottling line, and we, you know, needed to keep that up and running there. So that was a benefit there. So it's been great for us as a company, and we really have enjoyed being part of this project.
And Tom, do you want to just do a quick introduction, and maybe a few words on Phase 2, and then we'll be prepared for questions?
Yeah, just I'm Tom Kelly with Automation Alley. I'm with my Chief Operating Officer, Pavan Mazumdar, who also heads up our Project Diamond initiative. And just really quick, I can't thank Rufino enough, because Rufino absolutely is the ideal candidate that we wanted to see. And we're seeing, you know, the last time I was in front of you guys, I think we talked about Project Diamond as a bell curve. And it's like society. You know, you have some that are off and running right when they get the printer, and then you have the middle market like Rufino that's like, I don't know exactly what I have, but I'm going to learn about it, and then they transform, and it's changed their mindset going forward. And we have some laggard, as Sean, less than the 20%, probably more like 10%, but those are the ones we need to say, look, maybe this isn't for you. Let's cycle these to other companies that can use this. So we've been good stewards, I think, of the Project Diamond funding that has been entrusted to us. And we can talk a lot more about that, like what happened in phase 1 and where we're going with phase 2. But I just wanted to thank Rufino because he's such a great example of what we want America to look like going forward. That it really isn't about the large manufacturers. Manufacturing is moving from capital intensive to capital light. For this very reason, I don't need to build a great big plant in Italy to kick out thousands of parts from my distillers. I just need to have the drawing that goes to Rufino or any other distiller in the world, and they print those components. So think about what's happening in the world, and we need to make sure we're ahead of that because the world is aware of this, and everybody in the U.S. and the world are moving towards this digital manufacturing. And because of the auto industry, it's in many ways, it's a plus, 100%. We've created great wealth in Michigan because of the auto industry. But because you create that wealth, you tend to not be focused on where the world is going outside of what you know, because the money is coming in every day from your customers. And it's our job as Automation Alley. This is why Brooks founded us. This is why Dave Coulter and Dave Woodward and the administration today are focused on this. It's because the world is changing, and it's our job as Automation Alley to make sure that our manufacturers are prepared for what's coming. And Rufino is such a great example of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, any discussion?
I did it officially, is that?
Oh, yeah, Commissioner Spiz. I like it, I like it.
Just a couple questions. I don't think it's any surprise that I fully supported phase 1 and I've liked what it's done so far. My questions are more of, going into phase 2, we're looking to basically triple what's out there today, right? And so one of my questions is, do we have the interest from the manufacturing community, the 2,000 or 2,600 businesses out there that will support the tripling, the extra 750? Do we have that information? Because, I mean, I know it's a small portion. You got 6 back. You know, that's, you know,
Yeah.
negligible. But now you're going to triple it, right? So it is the want and the need there for this type of activity
Yeah.
in Oakland County.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Thank you, Mike. So I want to answer this truthfully, which is there's a curve that's happening. So if you ask a small manufacturer today, say, what is your pain? They'll say, my pain is I need workers. Plain and simple, I have more orders than I can fulfill. Every single manufacturer in our county is saying that exact same thing. If I only had workers, I could get this done. Well, meanwhile, there's this insidious thing that's happening, which is the world is digitizing and automating and allowing you to take those orders with the same amount of workers. And, or maybe just a few more, right? And so the idea is we need to be pushing on this. So every manufacturer is going to be in the 3D printing business. We have to, and we'll put the ones that are not in 3D printing out of business. We need to decide as a county, and I'm the advocate for this, that's our job at Automation Alley, to say we need to be on the forefront of this transition. So as Rufino says, I didn't know what I was going to do with this. It was a government printer, I took it. And then he's like, holy crap. Excuse me, holy cow, this is amazing. Look at what I can do with this. And he's now in the digital world because he now has awoken to what is possible in this digital world. And so our hope is that, yes, we are going to have a heavy lift to go out and take the hand of as many manufacturers as we can and says, please let us teach you what the world is going to be, because we want you to stay in Michigan and we want you to be here. And I think that those curves, because it's not just us talking, the world is changing around them as we're going, and this is going to be a 4-year project.
Right.
This goes till 2026. So we think the curve of them going, oh my God, I need a printer, and us having printers will intersect, and demand will be greater than we can supply.
And Commissioner Spiz, a great question. If you recall, in the CARES Act, when we approved this, we were working under the guise of, we had until 12/31/2020. So we distributed 250 printers within about a 90 to 120-day period. So those that might have been resistant, I'm not sure, hey, what's your gig? What's your angle here? You're really trying to push this on me. We made a decision of not to distribute funds to manufacturers in Oakland County like we did for small businesses, mom and pop restaurants and retail. Instead, we made the investment in the 3D printer because we were giving them a fishing pole for the future. We weren't going to give them dollars just to get out of the jam that they were in. And so that was a conscientious decision. But I believe with a longer runway, as Tom mentioned, that we'll be able to help convince folks that this is the right path. There might be some folks there say, I don't want that. But we've got some informational campaign that needs to take place.
Okay, and thank you, I appreciate that answer. One, which is creating another question for me.
That wasn't my design.
Sorry. With Automation Alley being at the forefront of this and pushing and going out to our manufacturers, I know unfortunately not every manufacturer is a member of Automation Alley today. I'm assuming we're going to deal with all manufacturers, no matter if they're members of Automation Alley or not.
As we did with Phase 1.
If I can address that, so Automation Alley, since about the last 3 years, we have changed our model where every small manufacturer gets a free membership in Automation Alley. That's not our target market to drive revenue dollars. That's our target market we're designed to help. So we have 7 segments that are members of Automation Alley. We have large manufacturers, we have large tech, small tech, professional services, academia, and government. And all of them generate a revenue for Automation Alley in total of about $6 million. And none of our small manufacturers, there are a few that pay us for other services, like they want over and above what they do getting by membership, but membership is free. So that is not an impediment. What we have to do is make them aware that that benefit is available to them, right? And so that will not be an objection.
Remind me what Automation Alley considers a small business? What number?
We consider it under 20 million in revenue. We
so
think
dollar
after
amount.
20 million, you should be helping your small brethren, not taking from Automation Alley so much as being a part of the solution to help because if you're 25 million, you have a supply chain now. You're big enough, and most of that, if you're small like that, your supply chain is close to you.
And
So
that's,
we want you to be.
I just want to clarify, that is where our focus is, but this is a federal program. In accordance to federal guidelines, the small business threshold is 500 or less for a small business.
Less employees.
Employees,
yeah.
excuse me, yes.
All right. I'll cede for now. I do have more questions.
Commissioner Cavell.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Regina, I didn't recognize you in your sport coat.
I clean up once in a while.
Yeah, no, so, the printer you got, it's a good investment. Would you have been willing? You got it for free.
Yeah, we pay a small monthly fee,
Okay.
but
Would it be something you're willing to chip in to pay for? Or that if you had been offered a discount or half price, would you have been willing to match it?
not originally because I didn't know what it was going to do for us.
Okay.
Knowing now what I know, I mean, I probably would be willing to, but
Okay.
at the time, I really didn't know, how this was going to impact our business. But
Gotcha.
now it is worth it. It's worth a lot.
And were you able to create new jobs using this printer, or?
I don't know that we created more jobs because of the printer. I think
Okay.
we have become more productive,
Okay.
and we're able to create more hours for
Okay.
current employees, if that makes any sense.
Sure. Yeah.
We keep them working longer and
Yeah.
in that sort of aspect.
Understood. So let's see. Oh, Tom, Commissioner Spiz asked about the interest level. So you said hope and think, and that you're able to get 250 out. Is like the longer timeline going to be something that helps you? Like, do you have a list already? You know, when we talked to like the sheriff's office in this room about getting people signed up for like school resource officers or trainings or something, they have to come to us with a list that says, we already got 10 people that care. Do you have one of those?
We do. We have a waiting list
Yeah.
from original Project Diamond. But not knowing that Phase 2 was even an option when we were running that list, we said, hey, we stopped at 50 or 60 or whatever it was. We said, look, guys, we don't want to create a false hope. There is no money to continue on this program. So we have a list of I want to say about 50 companies. But as soon as we open that up, it will start to stack up again.
Okay. And then the printers cost how much? Because the CARES Act one, if I did the math right, is 40 grand each. But this request, which is an appropriation, not an assignment,
Yeah.
apparently, is 20 grand each. So what's
Go
the
ahead,
real
go ahead.
number?
So that's an aggregate number. So we had 298 printers that went out for small manufacturers. We bought 2 metal print farms that the community could use, and the community going forward would be able to
So
use.
I want to
Yeah.
just 298 because we had 50 of them. Macomb jumped on as well, and they made an investment.
about
So
that,
I want to clarify the number.
250 for Oakland County, but,
Yeah.
and the 2 metal printers are in Oakland County. So, and those were $500,000 each, right? So it really skews the number. So the printers were about 20 grand each for these, what's called a Mark II, which is a very production-capable printer. We had, how many X7s?
30.
So X7 is a bigger carbon fiber printer.
If I could jump,
Yeah.
can you name the manufacturers of those equipments too? Because I know when we talked last, you're dealing with multiple organizations that make 3D printers.
Yeah.
Right, so
They were all Mark IV.
They were all Mark IVs because of the
Phase one.
CARES Act, because of the time constraint. We single sourced it because we had a partner with somebody. Going forward, we've already signed up on the IFCOM. We're like, hey, we think Project Diamond Phase 2 is going to happen. Help us be a part of this. We have HP has signed up, Stratasys has signed up, Mark Forged has signed up. 3D Systems we're in conversations with. This will be a holistic, multi-vendor environment because each one of them has different capabilities. You know, you don't want to be somebody that makes one thing really, really well. You have to make all the things if you want to be a true ecosystem. And that's where we're going in the future.
So I still didn't hear, how much do these printers cost? I know there's a different range, but.
So, well, to give you an idea, so the ones in Phase 1 were 20 grand. We
Okay.
expect that we will have a range anywhere from 5 grand for someone that says, I just want a prototype. I want to see what this is all about. And we're not going to give them, you know, a 20 grand printer. So we intend to have anywhere from 5 grand up until probably we'll have more print farms of metal printers because those are real workhorses. Or we might have an HP multi-jet that can do real fast volume that can compete with injection molding these days, right? Because if you're an injection molder, they don't see the world as changing. And I had a conversation with the CEO of up in Auburn Hills, multi-million-dollar, $100 million injection molder. I said, does 3D printing scare you? He said, it'll never reach our price point. This is as commoditized an industry as you get. And we're talking to HP saying, oh yeah, we're going to put them out of business. Right? So this is the disconnect. This is someone that's supposed to be extremely sophisticated and aware of what technology does. But if you're in manufacturing, you really don't have time to be, what's Silicon Valley doing? You wait for Silicon Valley to knock on your door and say, hey, I got this new thing. They're not doing that anymore. What Silicon Valley is saying, hey, I got this new thing. Let's start up a business, put you out of business, because I can make a lot more money than just selling you the printer, because I get the cash flow forever. This is the risk that's happening all over the world, and we have to be in the front of this.
So are you saying the price point is between $5,000 and $20,000? But you said-
And up.
And
Right?
up.
We want to let the market dictate what are the requirements in the community.
You want to use government money to let the market dictate how taxes are?
No, we want to use government money to seed the market for the appropriate technology and the appropriate company. The appropriate technology and the
Probably
appropriate.
should add that large variation in price or cost of a piece of equipment also comes with limitations of that equipment.
Sure.
You know, a metal printer is a lot more expensive, which Tom mentioned, but some of them only can make a piece this big. Some
Yeah.
can make
Yeah.
a piece this big, some can make a piece this
Right.
big.
That's
So
right.
based on the envelope you're looking at, will help drive the price point to a degree also.
So then this kind of comes to another thing is, I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong here, committee, but I don't think I've seen the Phase 1 report, and also this PowerPoint is brand new that we just saw, and what you're talking about is kind of big range of stuff. It feels uncomfortable to hand over $15 million for you to say, we're gonna like try and let the market dictate to seed it. So do you have any, like, you have documents you can share? You know, I know we've been through this before, where you send spreadsheets after the meeting. Maybe
Yeah,
don't
I
do that
mean,
anymore?
There's information up on the website that we posted on this. There's been other reports. We can reshare those with
Yeah.
you.
Thanks,
So
because you've
I
never
know
come to
there's-
this committee and told us how it went, and now you want more money, at least in my experience.
Yeah, we shared in early 2021 when you were a brand-new commissioner. We shared
Okay.
those results. So
Okay.
I know there's been a lot going on in the last 2 years, so
Sure.
it's very easy to
Fair enough.
maybe miss those. But yeah,
Okay.
be
Thank you.
happy to share those again with you.
Please do, thank you. And then, yeah, I guess I'll stop for now, because I got more questions about the paperwork side of things. But yeah.
Commissioner Wiper?
So as you go through these companies, these different manufacturers, you're going to evaluate what they might need, whether it's a $5,000 printer or the $10,000 printer. And tell me more about these metal printers, $500,000? We've got
2 of them right now. We've got one in Novi, and I think the other one's up in Rochester Hills. That's correct. That aren't just for those companies.
Okay. Yeah, you said
That's for
Pine
the
Farm.
community
Okay.
to use. And so, as they've mentioned, it's a 3D printer of community. But we're also looking in regards to a few of those investments and with Phase 2. It wouldn't be very many because we're really trying to hit a big swath here and make sure that we create a tipping point. But there are a few more investments that we would make and would be our recommendation.
And Sean, might I ask Pavan to address
Yeah, go
Commissioner
ahead.
Wiper's question? Because we do an assessment for every single manufacturer to decide what's the appropriate technology for their exact business.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So
yeah.
the way we see companies, and Tom mentioned this, where manufacturing is going is manufacturing is becoming software-driven, it is becoming distributed, and additive technology is the one technology that kind of encompasses that discipline. And so when we look at a business, one of the things we do is we do an assessment on them, and we look at 3 different dimensions. We look at their culture, because the traditional manufacturing culture is very process-driven. Today, manufacturing is process-based. Can I make it? Then I'll make it. Manufacturing is becoming outcome-based with design. So if the culture is an impediment, then one of the challenges we have to overcome is, can I make that cultural transformation first? Can I start them thinking about design before they start thinking about production? And so that's why we have a smaller printer to be much more judicious with the allocation of resources, to say, you know what, you should be focusing more on the workflows, on the digital side of things, and understanding how this is going to impact your business. Then you might have a company that is somewhere in the middle. They've kind of taken the leap. They've done a little bit in software, but they haven't explored additive as a modality in manufacturing. They would get sort of what we would call a mid-range printer. That would be along the lines of like this X7 that we talked about. They make higher volume production components. By the way, even that smaller printer will make production components. It's not a tchotchke maker. It's not a toy maker. So this is the important thing. And then you have the organizations that have already integrated workflows. They are actually making production parts. And those are the companies that would get the more expensive, higher volume printers, and also serve as a community resource, because the community builds upon itself. Manufacturers trust other manufacturers. As much as we can say, you might agree with me, you would be much more willing to give, more credence to a fellow manufacturer because they live your world. They understand what you're going through, right? And so that's how we would select the business. So the first thing we would do is do that assessment to understand where they are in their journey, and then help them along that path.
Just follow up on that. You said there'll be an informational campaign. Will the informational will get people in the door to get the assessment.
Yes, and I think the informational campaign will also talk about where a small business is at. Of course, we know we have some information to understand where they're at, and we'll be targeting those companies as well. But we'll also provide the different options. Unlike Phase 1, where we just had Mark Forge, we'll have different options to better fit the equipment and where that company is at in their whole growth of their company, too. So, and the application process will be a little bit different to Oakland County Economic Development. The first time we had to go fast. We were involved and the information was shared with us, but as the applications come in, we will be looking and taking the recommendations from Automation Alley and approving or not approving those applications. So.
Thank you.
I know you're on the list, Commissioner Spiz, but Gwen Markham hasn't gone yet, so
That's
give her
fine.
for her first time. Commissioner Markham.
Make sure that the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
So my history is that I spent my life as a process engineer with a number of different companies. And when you say, thinking about designing for manufacturing, it was always one of our biggest. I was always on the floor, right? And you're looking at this going, how are we supposed to put this widget together? Because those designers have no clue about what we're doing. So I appreciate that comment very much. So I have a couple of things to say. First of all, as my position in local government, and I've been in local government in various positions for about 20 years, I have sat and watched the state of Michigan and Oakland County and governments left and right handing out tax abatements to big companies that will come in and they'll come out to where I am in Novi and they'll take a nice piece of green property, promise that they're going to bring us 300 jobs. We give them a $12 million 12-year tax abatement, and 4 years later the building's empty. Okay? I have really been against tax abatements in general. I understand them. Once in a while, they're very important, but I've been against them as a general philosophy for how to drive manufacturing and also how to drive long-time, good-paying jobs. So I love the idea that you're going into small businesses at where they work, on what they work on, and how are we going to make that manufacturing operation stronger, more resilient, more flexible for the future. Because if there's anything a process engineer knows, it's that you can't be flexible. If you're not flexible, you're out of business eventually. So I appreciate the philosophy of trying to target these small businesses as opposed to the bigger ones, right? Because they are. We don't think of it that way, but they really are the foundational base of our economy here in Oakland County. And so I do think it's important that we do what we can to support you in ways that are going to pay off, versus the empty building after 3 years out where I am. So, a couple of questions. The big 3D metal printing that's in Novi, next time somebody's out there, would you give me a call? Because I'd like to go see it. I'm an old process engineer at heart, and, I'd like to do that. Secondly, what's your training structure look like for, you come into Mr. Ruffini's company, and how do you train people as to what they need, and what's that partnership look like?
You hit it right on the head. It's the training that makes the difference, right? Because when you look at a 3D printer, it looks so completely different from anything you have. You might agree with it. It looks actually like a sleek microwave machine, microwave oven. Sorry. And you look at this and you go, this is supposed to make something for me. So in phase 1, with the partnership of Mark Forge, we had something called Mark Forge University. And it was a full training program. I'm assuming that's what kind of gave you your foot in the door in the beginning.
I think it was a half a day or a day going through the online course with them.
Right.
And that's really what got me up to speed.
Right. And again, it was a compressed time frame. We had 90 to 120 days. We used Mark Forge University because it was prepackaged. It was very aligned with their equipment. In phase two, it's going to be much more about some of the other themes that appear. As you're a process engineer, you'll understand this. When you talk about additive, you start with the outcome in mind, not the process in mind. And so you have to do something called design for additive manufacturing. It's a culture shift. And so we're putting together, we are assembling, and not just in the US, but we have a partnership with Manchester University in the UK. They've approached us because they've built an excellent curriculum on how you can do this culture shift and make that content available for our manufacturers. So training is one of those things. And also, a part of the training piece is the design, but part of it is integrating that workflow in your organization. Today, a lot of manufacturers are still pushing paper along their lines because that is how they used to manage the process. Now the thread is digital. And so, and again, this is why additive is going to be such a transformative play or a dynamic that if you are not up to speed on additive, that transformation is going to come so quickly, you're not going to have time to respond. And so along with the training for the design for additive, it is how do you create a collaborative workflow within your organization so that you're actually having this team effort in the organization. It's much more than just the additive piece. But training is absolutely, and we call it, in our own little world, we call it change management, right? It's basically how am I changing the culture of the organization, but one step at a time without it becoming too traumatic, because you still have to get your product out. You still have to do all of that. So how can we build this balance of change, but without impacting what's going on today?
Thank you for that. My second question is, you're talking about a couple thousand of these. Is there a supply issue with the 3D printers?
It's 750, not a couple thousand.
Good question. And we've been cautious, right? We start talking to any vendor. The moment they hear about Project Diamond and they think about Project Diamond Phase 2, everybody's, they're all like, oh, where's your PO? I'm like, no. Where is it? You're absolutely correct. There are some situations where there are some constraints, and there are some situations where there aren't. So when we move forward, that's when we'll know how do we balance this out. I think that runway that Sean mentioned is going to make a huge difference because we can be much more deliberate. And the important thing to understand is we don't need to wait for that supply chain to get loose, because the idea is if I can train someone and use a community resource, their knowledge can be put to use immediately. It doesn't mean they need to have that physical printer. Yes, is it beneficial? Absolutely. But if Rufino could go in and print and design a component and then send it to print to some other Project Diamond member, because it's a collaborative network, which, by the way, unfortunately will go away if we don't move forward, right? Then we have this opportunity of him learning ahead of time and let the supply chain catch up. But the learning is the impediment. It's not the printer physically in the location.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next is Commissioner Spiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Currently, I only have 2 questions. We'll see how many come out of your answers.
Keep your answers short.
I'll keep my answer short.
Earlier, I
Yes,
think
no.
many of us know that the timeframe of this ends at the end of 2026. Where do you see this going after 2026 with 1,000? I'm going to say we get everything out, that we have
Great,
1,000
yeah.
printers. Where is it going on to January 1, 2027?
So one of the things, as you saw in the presentation, we executed this request from the Ukraine Ministry of Defense for these tourniquet parts, which, by the way, they were not able to produce with traditional methods because they didn't have the dies. The dies weren't, or the molds weren't available. We did that using something that we call the Command Center. The Command Center is a piece of software in which we can take over the network. It's not like we don't take it over as in, we shut everything down, but there's a mechanism where we can send a print file to 300 printers because the Macomb printers are also part of this network. That is not a commercial network. That is just a send print out and get this, an emergency network. The objective in phase 2 is to actually build a marketplace where we can actually be able to distribute orders and have commercial activity. So if Rufino's printer is not active, he might actually have the ability to generate print files or produce print files for commercial activity and make that commercial activity be sustainable, sustain essentially the network. So at some point, that network becomes sustainable, and it becomes an open marketplace that produces components. And it's not just big players placing orders. It's small players having the ability to produce like bigs. Because if I design a component and I just have one printer, but I can leverage the 800 or so printers, I now have great manufacturing capacity. Now, there are some elements we need to put in place, which we're working on, standardization of quality and things like that, but we are working on those pieces as well. That would be the objective. So when this becomes, when the sun sets, it's a self-sustaining economy.
Okay, thank you for that. To drive another question, so your answer wasn't short enough, according to Sean. And I can understand the self-sustaining system by itself, but let's say out of the 1,000, we have 200 that are no longer using the machine for whatever reason. They went out of business, they decided they wanted to play the game. Is Automation Alley still going to be in the business of taking those 200 machines, because I'm assuming you're not signing over ownership directly to the manufacturer?
Yeah,
Okay, there's a clawback clause that you're going to say, okay, I have 200 more, I got 200 other small businesses, I'm going to continue to redistribute, and that's going to be an ongoing thing until these machines hit their end of life, which could be 20 years from now. Is that the plan?
Yes. Short enough?
Learning. Okay, thank you for that. Now, this is going to kind of tie into what Charlie's question was. I don't believe you're here today asking for $15 million to start, let's say, January 1. You don't want a $15 million check to start. You're going to have a ramp-up plan through 23, 24, 25, and 26, and you're going to extend that $15 million out of that entire lifetime. That's at least my thinking, and I'd like you to confirm that for me. So from a spend perspective, you're saying, okay, maybe I might spend $8 million in 2023, $2 million in 24, $2 million in 25, and another $3 million, that doesn't add to 15 probably, but to 26. Is that kind of your strategy and your thought process? It's, I just want this bucket of $15 million, and I'm going to slice it as I need it, probably start up fast, and then
That's
flatten
exactly
out to a
it.
curve.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely, and we can provide quarterly updates in regards to the expenditure of funds as well as the distribution of printers
Oh, yeah,
along the way.
I would definitely like updates and reports and
Yeah.
see how things are going, because it's something that I think is very important, not only to Oakland County, but to the industry. And I've been on the back of 3D printing for a decade prior to this, so I fully understand the technology, and I think it's the future. And as you guys may have heard me say, for my day job, we bought 3D printers 10 years ago. It was the best investment the company ever made. They now run 24/7, 365, and when some of the engineers in general like to touch, feel parts, right? Is anybody that's manufactured like to touch and feel versus looking at a piece of paper on a computer screen, for example. So when you can touch and feel it, so they might need one part, they're building 3 or 4. So we actually had to slow them down and say, okay, you guys are building too many parts. If you need one part, build one part. Don't build 4 just because you'd like to look at it and you like to have it on your desk.
So do
So I
you,
expect you're probably seeing the same thing with some of your manufacturers.
And Commissioner Spitz, I bet that first year was really painful, because the CFO was like, why did we get these? And once the engineers got over that first hump, they're like, their eyes opened, and you said now it runs 24/7, but
Yeah.
I bet it was like a skunk works when you first got it.
It wasn't really, the first year, it wasn't really that difficult, because what happened is normally in the initial stages of 3D printing, you had all these machining businesses out there that did everybody. Had the lathe, the CNC machine, the multi-axis. You were going out to them, parts were taking 6, 7, 8, 10 weeks, plus costing you, a pen would cost, let's say this pen cost you $1,000 a part because you had to machine it by hand and it took you 20 hours. Now I can have this in 2 hours and it cost me $5. And now so that's one of the reasons engineers were doing it. Instead of getting 1 because of the cost, they're getting 10 because it's still a lot cheaper, but now they have 10 of them just in case.
so all we're trying to do with this program, in your words, is make sure that there's 600 other companies that make the best investment ever.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Cabell.
Yeah, thank you. So, you keep talking about automation and additive, right? Industry 4.0 is about automation, your automation alley. Additive manufacturing, industrial standard, industry-wide. All of those to me, and I don't know if you want to respond to this or not, this is kind of more of a statement, but if you have feelings, that's fine. The question's coming after it, which is all of those sound to me like things that the people that are management that run the plants or run the small manufacturing or these SMEs like, but that doesn't include the worker. And Oakland County represents 1.2 million people, not the 244 businesses or 750 businesses. And so then the question is, how many of these are union shops?
So I don't know how many are union shops, but that would be that would be an understandable conclusion. What actually happens in small businesses, and you might want to talk about this, is ownership and the frontline workers are a lot closer than they are in larger organizations.
Mm-hmm.
When we gave it, there's another company, ALCS, Air and Liquid Systems, this printer to them. It was a very similar experience. The owner, who had been in traditional manufacturing, had really not a lot of interest till those first parts started coming out. And he saw, actually, we have a case study where he had a component that cost $100 that they were out basically purchasing from the outside, and they were able to print it internally. And at that point, he was transformed. He was like, oh, wow, this is awesome. And he started essentially asking his engineers, so we're talking about middle management, to start looking at applications. Those engineers started developing applications, many of them for ergonomic applications, things that would be like little handles or things like that. What happened 3 to 6 months after that was it was the frontline workers who were working with the equipment on the day-to-day basis that were coming up with the ideas. They were the ones who were basically saying, hey, you know what, when I do this handle juts out this much, and the web of my palm, and I'm making this up, but this is an illustration, hurts, and every single time it's a pain. Can we just maybe put a little thing here that we push out? And they'd be like, okay, let's prototype this. And so it's very interesting. In small businesses, and by the way, before I was with Automation Alley, I was running a small business. We are very close to our frontline workers. That doesn't happen in large organizations. So again, I don't know the answer about the union shop, but I can tell you about the culture. The culture is much more close-knit in a small business than it is in a large organization.
Yeah, close to manufacturing. I'm on the line. So I'm very close.
Yeah.
Ergonomically, we have done a lot of that stuff too, so it makes the job easier. And then, don't let automation sound as if it's taking somebody's job. Like I said before, we're actually to keep people working. Line breaks down for us, we're sending people home for the day. If we can keep that line up and running, we keep those people working longer and more.
So then, question for you, I guess, too, then is, no disrespect, but you didn't see the value of this. Then you got one for free from the government. Now you see the benefit of it. So there was a day before you had the printer, and then there's the day after. In our country, isn't it kind of on you, the business owner, and this small cadre of people working at Valentine Distillery to figure out how to innovate? So then, isn't there a benefit for you to chip in something like a match? Or if you weren't innovative enough, let's say, for you to discover 3D printers are an awesome investment, isn't that kind of on you?
Yeah, I see your argument.
Yeah.
I would just say that, especially for a company like us,
Yeah.
my stated, methods of production, I tout, they're centuries old.
Yeah.
We are, stuck back
Yeah.
centuries.
I remember seeing it. It's awesome. Yeah.
That's the way we feel like we can make the best spirits. So I think to be able to bring a company like us into the future, I can only speak for me. It's great for our company.
And Commissioner Cavill, what we're wrestling with, this is what Automation Alley wrestles with day in and day out, is apathy in the manufacturing community that said, if we went to them and said, look, here's a 20 grand printer, you only have to pay 5 grand. Now, we do charge them $49 a month. So if you take that over the 3-year life of Project Diamond Phase 1 that's occurring, they are paying
$49?
$49 a month. So it's just enough of a hurdle to say, look, this isn't just a freebie. You have to want it with us. But if we said, instead of 20 grand, you give us 5 grand and we'll give you the printer, their CFO says, I don't understand what the return on investment is. We got so many fires going on. Why would we go get a printer? Go use that 5 grand to hire Kelly Services to get a person in here. They just don't see the risk. If I went to somebody and said, hey, this thing, COVID, is coming, let me give you a vaccine, they'd go, what the hell are you talking about? What are you even talking about? Yeah. This is why we believe as Automation Alley, why we said to Sean when we first went down this path, you cannot make it a loan or something that you put them on the hook. If you want to do true economic development, you have to seed the market with a fishing pole, and then you have to teach them how to fish, and then they're hooked. But if you say, look, I'm not in the fishing industry, and what the hell am I going to do with a fishing pole? I don't care if it's half price. It means nothing to me, right? That's why we consciously made the decision that we have to give them the printer and then seed the market with these, and that creates the change. And what we hope will happen is when we hit this critical mass, it's that the other 1,500 manufacturers in Oakland County come on board, because we've hit enough people that are having enough conversations that they then go to their owner and say, yes, I would like a printer. And the owner says, yeah, Bob and Mary and Frank and everybody, they all got one and they love him. And now I want to take that risk. That's why we think it has to be a grant.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have taken that risk if it was upfront money. Over the course of the 3 years, I mean, we're chipping in a decent amount. But that's what made it possible for us.
And what I would say is our job in economic development is in some ways to be looking out and looking in the future. Michigan has always rested on the fact that we are the the hub of putting the world on wheels. We cannot take that for granted. Tennessee and Kentucky are coming for us. They've been getting more designations for EV sites there, electric vehicles, than us in Michigan. This is, in a small way, trying to create a competitive advantage and get our Tier 2s and Tier 3s ready for this, to hopefully encourage Stellantis, Ford, and GM to make more investments in the future, because it's coming. And it's our job to make sure that we're preparing the future. And in this county, that's what our economic development team is trying to do.
So, but then you're saying you hope you'll inspire business owners who are supposed to lift themselves up by their bootstraps and all that and innovate on their own to grow, and if they fail, it's their fault, that you're hoping they will be inspired by your example and others, and the cost is $15 million of taxpayer money from all of us. So I understand the value and I appreciate that. And I understand the network and how we have to get there, but like if, you can only push people so far before they're, ready to take that leap. So I don't.
If they don't take the leap, then the funds won't be expended, and it'll drop to another program.
So then here's a question then. Why not then, instead of throwing the whole thing for $15 million, why not do what Commissioner Spiz says? We'll give you 1 or 2 years to see how it goes, and then come back and ask for more.
The program we built is the program that we believe, as the experts in the field, that will work.
So you'd be okay? I don't know.
No.
Does that mean?
We're asking for the $15 million.
Right.
We need to go forward, and we need to make sure that we're getting a marketplace in place and that we're working with our suppliers to have those.
So-
if you do 1 or 2 and build it as they come, we're not going to build enough of a robust economy.
Yeah.
Because it's
in
an
order to-
appropriation and an assignment.
I would argue that.
It's an
phase one
appropriation.
was the pilot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Phase 1 was the pilot. And Phase 1, we started to build this network where they can all use each other's printers, because you want to have a manufacturer take an order, have a printer, and say, I can print 1,000 of these at a time by using our network. The Phase 1 pilot started to stitch them together. Phase 2, we need that entire commitment, because our commitment to our community of printers and of software is you're not going to have to come hand to mouth every year and fight for your supper. That will be devastating, that's just not the way it works when you're building an ecosystem. And that is our economic development prerogative, is not to give them a printer. I actually don't think that's the play. The play is not to give them a printer. The play is to give them a printer that then stitches them into an ecosystem that is sticky, that they don't ever want to leave. Because if I go from Oakland County to Tennessee, I have to leave this ecosystem. I have to unplug from this ecosystem, never to return. And now how do I find the capital to take advantage of 700 other printers? I can't possibly do it. So this is as much of a software play as it is a hardware play. And I personally believe it's all a software play. The hardware is irrelevant because the hardware is going to change over time. It's the ecosystem. We're subtly building an ecosystem that cannot be divorced from without tremendous pain. And that's what we want to do in Oakland County. That creates the sticky.
So, shifting gears a little bit. The resolution has the Economic Development Department doing all the things. There isn't anything that I saw, and tell me if I'm wrong, for reporting. Is it? Okay.
Quarterly reports.
Okay, my bad. But everything here says instead of coming back to EDI, the Economic Development Department will do that. I mean, is there any willingness to be a little bit more collaborative? Because this feels like we're giving you money and then you'll send us a report and we won't be able to adjust.
Collaborative.
Not that we don't trust you, but, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean.
It's our job.
You know, and I'll just say this is a government, function, so I'm going to, no disrespect.
Yeah.
The executive branch needs to execute.
Yep.
The legislative branch needs to legislate. And so you're asking to be collaborative in an operational component, and I think we just need to remember our roles. So we're happy to be collaborative, and we have been on other programs. I mean, if we want to invite a few commissioners to sit down with the economic development team to look at the applications that are being recommended by Automation Alley, no problem with that.
Okay.
We've done that in the past.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say then, this feels like good money after bad. I don't think that if businesses are not going to adapt to this, especially without a matching component, and then we also hear from you all saying the things that it's so hard for other people in our community, like poor people and unheard people, to be lifted up and heard, and there are all these requirements and requests and demands and matching things required of those types of people. But for business owners that are not willing to adapt and advance, we're giving them free things. Feels counterintuitive to me. And we don't know if they're union shops. We don't know how this is going to work with workers or not, especially at scale. I understand where Industry 4.0 is going, but this doesn't feel right to me. And it also then competing priorities with what we do with this ARPA. And there's supposed to be a pause with the ARPA allocations that Hillary told us about. So we're supposed to be making sure we're reflecting and adapting to figure out what we want to do with the remaining ARPA. This feels ill-timed. This feels like it might hurt workers, and that's not clear. And it feels like we're giving people that don't need stuff so they can make more money, while we're also asking of people that don't have money to do extra. This feels bad.
I hear you and respectfully disagree.
Understood.
All right, so we have Commissioner Spiz for a third time, then Commissioner
Sorry,
Woodward, and
Charlie-
I'll give some final questions.
Charlie drove a couple more questions for me. And it might help, it might hurt, I don't know. But with each piece of equipment, there's always maintenance on them. So who is funding the maintenance on these pieces of equipment? Some have maintenance contracts that they might have with the 250, and it'll just expand when you get to 750. And that's not a cheap expense. So who's paying for that maintenance? Is Automation Alley paying part of it? Is it coming out of the $49 a month? And the second point is, each one of these pieces of equipment take material to actually make a part. It just doesn't make it out of thin air, right? Which that material is not inexpensive, right? And who pays for the material to run the parts in those machines?
So in phase one, the maintenance was included in the package for a duration. It was, and you, I don't know what your experience has been with maintenance. but they're pretty solid machines. But every time something happens, you have Mark Forged to call, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's good support with the company, but we have not had maintenance yet
Yeah.
on our machine, and we pay for the material that we use.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess, would that be the same plan going into phase 2? Would it come with a maintenance contract for those, or will it be a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, there's one to be.
Yeah, they're like
Yeah.
usually 1 or 2 years in a warranty, but.
I see what you're trying to do.
Right. The idea, though, the idea is, you get this printer, and you get to a point where you start realizing this printer is indispensable, and at some point you basically say, "Got it," and I'm going to take it and I'm going to run with this. And at some point you take over the full responsibility of the maintenance.
Agree, or they buy
Yeah.
their own because they need something different,
Right.
and then they get that one back, and we go
Yeah.
somewhere else. There's also an option. One of the other things I just wanted to point out, and this will be my final comment for my third time. Sean, a couple times you brought up onshoring, and any of these questions in onshoring come up. And one of the things, okay, one of the things that, sorry, Dave, I stole your thunder, but one of the things, and many in this room may or may not be aware of, in auto industry, a lot of things going to China, right? A lot of the tool building is going to China, because tool building actually for skilled trades is becoming a lost art. You can't find tool builders in this country anymore. It's very difficult. But with this technology and this equipment, it will either slow and or start bringing some of that technology back or some of that workload back to this country, because we won't need to go to China to do tool builds anymore because we can use 3D printing.
So it'll be automated.
It'd be automated, but you're bringing that, you're not sending that money to China anymore. Let me put it that way, right? We're not paying a tool builder in China to build a part, and in maybe some cases actually run production of that part in China and ship it here. Now you're actually going to have that production here in this country versus sending it there. So to me, that's a plus, and I think it needs to be touted a little bit more that we're looking to reduce the amount of work that's going off.
But the production.
Sure. Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Woodward for the final questions, and I'll give a couple comments.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, gentlemen, thank you very much. Last night, I was enjoying your White Blossom product, maybe a little too much. I think your story is so compelling. I mean, in terms of what, incorporating this technology, rethinking the business model, and using it to help shape like the future growth. I mean, it is so telling. And your story, I think, is symbolic of a lot of things. When we did the pilot, and I mean, I had a lot of conversations with Sean and talked with, Tom and others, and through that process, I mean, it became increasingly clear, and from a manufacturing place, as someone who has always supported building things in America, building things here, that we are, a country that built things, and then just to see the transition, whether it was the first runs of automation, the Great Recession, coronavirus, and the impact on manufacturing. What the pilot, and the reporting that you, did submit, from round one, that took an inventory. We have actually one of the best inventories of our manufacturing base in Oakland County, in the history of Oakland County. It's, in large part because of Diamond Phase 1. There are a number of things that are there. Many of these, make 1, 2, 3 parts for the auto suppliers. We are about to go into an EV production that requires less parts. For these manufacturers and the jobs that they support to be maintained, they have to make more than what they just currently do. And they have to be nimble and ability to do that. And I think you've done, it didn't really come up in the presentation today. You've got operations that are set in their ways. This is the way we've done it for the last 20 years. I handed the keys over to my kid, and these are small operations. The potential of, leveraging this technology, and you did talk about the ecosystem, where as, the shift from capital intensive to capital light. It's really stuck with me because it is how that mom and pop manufacturing is able to compete for the long term, and to build a resilient manufacturing economy that can take the blows of a pandemic, a recession, and all these other types of things, because it can move faster. It can produce the things on demand, and frankly help support a host of industries instead of supporting 1 or 2 parts for one industry and one vehicle and one production line. I look at this as something that is helping catalyze a new approach to a sector that is very significant to the Oakland County economy. And it's getting people to do something, at least to entertain the idea that they might not be, recognizing as the most important. 'Cause I think you highlighted that we need to get more people on the line so they can make this part a little bit faster. This is trying to take 3, 5, 10 steps ahead, and projecting, and anticipating what that can be. I don't know what the end. In some ways, we're talking about trying to support the creation of an industry to manufacture the things that I don't know what is going to be manufactured in the future. But having the fundamental components to be able to do that, makes sense. When I look at the return on investment, $15 million to seed the transformation of our manufacturing sector to be relevant and resilient for the next decades and beyond. I think it pays it over and over in terms of value. The jobs that are tied to this industry, to hold those jobs, because there is a big, giant, crushing wave that is coming, that if there is not some shift, and I support, Commissioner Cavell's point, it's well, should they just, if you don't adjust, you get taken out. My biggest concern, and I've seen this when there's been statewide or even regional economic development, we need to diversify our economy, and then all of a sudden it's we're not going to make things anymore. We're going to try to invest in these industries. This is a doubling down on making things in America. This is betting on the home team, and frankly, the thing that helped build the middle class in this area, and to be able to visualize where we have seen success of putting these these 3D printers, because I think it is important. There's a capital investment there, but it is less about the printer. It is about building this network. It's about these operations working together, diversifying, and being able to maintain relevance for the long term. And so I think that, I'm supportive of this program. I think it's absolutely necessary. I think that I think to think about this as seeding further development of, an economic development that doesn't just say on a promise and a whim that a tax abatement produces this many jobs. This is, there are metrics and performances that have to happen. You have to use it. If you don't use it, it will be put somewhere else. It is, training. I think there's a whole workforce development arm of training how to actually do this. I think it helps protect the jobs that we have. I think it will lend itself, and yes, there's an automation component, and that is going to be happening. But it also, believe also frees up the ability for labor to be able to be more productive, to do more things, and to create those jobs that these manufacturers are going to support. So I support it. I believe, I'm going to make sure I covered everything on my list here. The network, EV, retaining jobs, one question in terms of the evaluation of the applicant. So Automation Alley, already developed and did a little bit of this obviously with phase 1. What does that evaluation process look like? What are all the pieces?
There'll be an application. We'll certainly need to make sure that in that application that the ARPA eligibility parameters are met according to Treasury guidance. That's number one, first and foremost, because we don't want an auditor coming back later and saying, no, they weren't qualified. So that will be very important to make sure. We'll go through the application process. Automation Alley will put those applications out. They'll review them in regards to giving us candidates in economic development based upon the recommendations. We'll ask questions in whether we confirm or, hey, we want to make sure that there's a good distribution regionally as well. We saw proportional to where the manufacturers are. We don't want one, necessary, area that might only have 5% manufacturing somehow has 20% of the printers. So there'll be a balancing act, and that will be the responsibility of the Oakland County Economic Development Department to make sure that that's taking place.
Great. Thank you. So these are my next things are technical in terms of cleaning this up a little bit. That as the resolution as it's currently written says hereby assigns $15 million. This would be hereby appropriates. So if I can make a motion to strike.
I got some comments before.
Oh, you got
that,
comments?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then
I will come back to the technical stuff afterwards.
I was going to call on you anyways for that.
Fair enough.
So this one is a question. I don't want to get into too much discussion on it through Commissioner Cavell, through the chairs. What is the administration fee on the $15 million to Automation Alley? Is there one?
So, yes, there is. We are, the federal government has a Byzantine way that they calculate it, but the minimum that you're allowed to charge is 10%. And that's what our overhead rate is over the life of the thing.
Okay.
So it's forever many years, that's what the overhead is, 10%. By federal law, we have to
Thank you.
put that in.
The question I had is, first is, how do you gauge when a manufacturer's not using a printer? Because you said you took some back, right? I just want to,
Printing, right? We've
Yeah,
got-
so all these printers are actually accessible on the network.
Okay.
And there's monitoring software that tells you, A, whether it's on the network, or B, whether it's printing.
excellent, thank you. And then a few things, I do like the balance between the job loss and job creation that's projected, right? Because we all know, even the big three, I come from the industry, construction, I put in a lot of the lines in these, around this whole Michigan, right? Took out lines, put new lines in, and everything's getting automated. It's been getting that way for years, right? Not that I agree with it all the time, because I don't want the job lost, but if there's job creation, it's like you guys are emceeing to my ears right now, right? As well as, you bring my favorite beverage maker here, so I don't know if that was by design, but.
No comment.
Right. I would ask if we could.
He has samples too afterwards,
All right.
prior to the finance committee.
I like it. I'd like to tour one of the companies, like Ms. Markham asked, wanted to see the printing. I do like the training aspect of it, because that's very important. I come from the training field. I'm a union guy myself, right? So training is very important. I do like that, instead of just, here you go, figure it out. And the one thing I want to add is to make a comment on when you asked about small businesses, if you would have, Commissioner Cavell said, would you invest in it before? Small businesses, it's high risk, low reward potentially, right? So sometimes small businesses aren't able to make that risk, right? And then go with the small businesses being union. A lot of times small businesses aren't union because they're small, but when you help them out and they grow, then that's when you get the opportunity to have more employees, more potential. Like you said, they get more disconnected, not by design, but just the way it is, from their employees than they were when there's only 20, right? And then when you have 300, it's a whole different ballgame. And so I do appreciate that. And you answered all my other questions. So with that being said, we'll call on Commissioner Chairman Woodward for amendment.
Amendments. All right. So I have, well, I think there's two here. Yeah, okay, so two amendments. So the first amendment is going to address the appropriations versus assignment issue. So I can take a break and I can write it up, but I think it's pretty simple. It's like in the first now therefore be it resolved clause, to strike the word assigns and replace it with appropriates. And then later in that sentence, strike the words future appropriation, so that it would read, if this amendment passed, that the Oakland County Board of Commissioners hereby appropriates $15 million in ARPA funds to Oakland County Economic Development for the proposed Project Diamond Phase 2. So that's.
So it's been.
Yeah, so it's that, and then also strike the last be it further resolved clause, because we will need to add a budget amendment.
Okay.
So that would be my motion.
He said will, yeah.
We'll need to add,
Support.
So it's a move by Commissioner Spiz, or Woodward, seconded by Commissioner Spiz. So I will be voting yes on this. I agree with those amendments. Call the roll, please, or prompt the vote.
On the amendment.
okay.
On the amendment, yes.
Changing assigns to appropriate and also striking future appropriation.
Well, future appropriation 2, I guess. It
Two.
should be all 3 words. Yeah.
Thank you. We have 5 yeas and 1 nay.
All right, motion carries. Now on, go ahead.
Okay, well, so one more, I it's broken because I think it was easier. One more amendment where it says submitting quarterly expenditure reports to add after reports to the Oakland County Board of Commissioners Economic Development and Infrastructure Committee. So,
Right.
it's clearly it's coming here.
Yeah.
And not
Commissioner,
into the world.
so it's been moved by Commissioner Woodward, seconded by Commissioner Wiper. So we will prompt the vote on the
No,
amendment,
I asked.
the second amendment that's just been offered.
Just type it in real quick here.
All right.
I'll put amend to.
4 times. Come on, guys.
You're against reading the reports here?
We have 5 yeas,
History will
1 nay.
vindicate.
All right,
Okay.
motion carries. Is there any, you only get 3 amendments, that's all I'm allowed. No,
Nope,
I'm just
I'm
kidding.
good on the amendment stuff, and then I think there might be some other amendments that, get brought, brought up in finance, or, talking to other colleagues, I have like some additional questions. But I did have one question, if I can just come back to the training aspect. What is the training support, speaking out, the training support provided to these manufacturers that come forward? So I want to be able to ask that question so that those who are watching can hear it. And so maybe, I know you have trained yourself and incorporated, but what is, I think,
Yeah,
is a
so-
complex system?
So in phase one, because we had a single-sourced printer, the training was managed by Markforged, which was the company that actually provided the training. In phase two, we see this to be a combination of some generic training that applies to additive in general. It would also be something that would provide you with more about like the possibilities, what can be done with additive, design for additive manufacturing, things like that, design, the impact of design. And in addition to that, we also expect the individual vendors of these machines and technology to provide training. And then the third component is we have, additional software applications that make additive much more productive. So there's a lot of conversation about, what does this mean to the worker? This is an excellent opportunity to empower the worker, the frontline worker. They would not get this opportunity because if they work in a traditional plant, there is nothing additive. But this is essentially one of those, low-hanging fruit. It's an enabler to get frontline workers the opportunity to get simplified training. So that's the other piece, and that would be part of what the first component. So it'd be a comprehensive piece of training. And not to mention, we also talk about having peer groups. So I don't know if, Rufino, you were part of these lunch and learns that we did in phase one. It's a great opportunity to meet other manufacturers and learn from each other, and that's more informal.
So, you satisfied? All right, so now we will call the roll.
Well, we have to- as amended, yeah.
Oh, yeah, call the roll.
Well, move.
Oh, we have to
We
move?
need a motion.
Oh, we haven't, well, that's right. I thought we already did, so.
Well,
We need a
Moved
mo,
at the beginning.
yeah, it was moved. We already moved and supported it. So-
Then it was amended.
How did we amend something if we didn't?
Okay, it was,
Yeah.
sorry, Spiz and Markham, okay.
Yeah,
Vote.
yeah.
As amended.
Yes, so we're voting on the agenda item as amended twice. That went through. I'm voting yes on this. I agree. I think this is a good step for our manufacturing, and we have to get with the times because Tennessee is running over us right now.
As they said, the trajectory of history is against.
Well, they've already ran over us. So prompt the vote, please,
As amended.
as amended.
Tennessee.
My sister lives in Tennessee, and they just told me that this weekend. I was like, what?
We have 5 yeas, 1 nay.
This is not football.
5 yeas, 1 nay, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Very much. Thank you, everyone.
All right, so now we have our last agenda item. It's Facilities Management Resolution Alternative Energy Supplier Renewable Electrical Supply Agreement. We need a motion.
Didn't bring the experience last time either.
Need a motion? Moved by Commissioner Spiz, second by Commissioner Markham. Good morning. Thank you for waiting. We appreciate the time that you guys spent here just waiting for us.
I appreciate it.
Yes.
My name is Erin Quattel. I'm the Chief Environmental Sustainability Officer. Thank you for reviewing this today. We are talking about a potential contract to engage with for solar. And a little bit of history, we have a choice purchasing agreement for our electricity, which means that we go essentially out to the market to review and purchase our electricity and as well as natural gas for the Oakland County campus facilities and operations. And through that, we have partnered with Executive Energy. And they have provided us with consulting services to help with that negotiating process, as well as make sure that Oakland County has the best market rates for our energy that is needed. So when I first came on staff, I met with everyone to talk about energy, and one of the things I had mentioned was conversations about how to transition to a cleaner energy source, including renewables. And one of the things that our great consultant was able to provide for us was an opportunity to have 75% of our energy dedicated to solar or coming from solar. And so that is the proposal that you have in front of you today. A quick little factoid, if we were to approve this and move this forward, this would go into effect in 2026. And again, that would be 75% of our total electricity use would be dedicated to solar, and that would account for a reduction of 40% of our greenhouse gas emissions. And as a reminder, our goal, our interim goal for our greenhouse gas reduction emissions would be 50% by 2035. And so we would have the remaining 10% that we would need to achieve, and we would be able to get this by 2026. There's a lot of technical information associated with this, so I have Joe Murphy with me here as well to kind of talk further about that. But I just thank you for your time and review. And Joe, do you want to add more additional context?
Sure thing. The big thing here is not only are we going to do what's right, we're going to beat the utility rate on Rider 17 if prices remain what they are, and the county's going to save money. So it's a good thing. So Will can ask the questions. I know there's going to be a ton of questions here, so yep.
Any discussion? Commissioner Whitebird?
Well, I mean,
I don't see you. I don't see you on
Oh,
there.
sorry about that. You've reviewed the trends, and you're confident it's going to save, depending even if things go up or down. It looks like over the history of DT and the charges.
The history
This is looking-
of the utility over the 19 years, I believe we were at 2.8% price increase with the utility. And I don't know if anybody's seen the news yesterday where they're talking about another 8%. So, I mean, it's only going to go up. This locks us in at a good market that's going to beat the tariff rate.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Spiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did you say 2026 this takes effect?
Correct.
And the potential savings, it starts off at 2022.
That's
And
showing
this
our,
sheet right
yeah,
here.
the sheet's showing our current, we have a contract that expires in 2026. It was a 2-year contract, so that's our current prices right now that we're doing with the company. That contract is up in 2026, so that's when the new pricing we were going out to receive.
Maybe I'm just confused there.
That's okay.
So for 22 through 26, are we staying with DTE, or are we
No,
going
we're
with a different?
we're an alternative energy supplier right now.
Okay, so for 22 to 26, we'll go with AES.
That's correct.
But
Sorry.
for 27 to 36, we're going with AES Solar.
Correct, which is actually.
Same company or different?
Potentially, it's going to be a different company. We're asking for 3 prices. We got a pretty good idea who's going to be able to do that
Okay.
based on the requirements we're looking for the solar.
And regardless, with our current contract, we are still below the market rate for DTE because we're not technically DTE customers, and so we're still saving money in the interim between now and that 2026 date.
Yeah, I mean, I could see the obvious savings in there, so I mean, if we get to this, great. We'll save Oakland County $12 million plus over the next 10 years, which is a great opportunity. I'm all for saving money. So I don't know how anybody could say no to this based on saving the county and the taxpayers this kind of money. I mean, it's amazing. My only real question is, because I didn't get a chance to look at the contracts because they weren't in the original package, but target 75%. In those contracts, what if we don't hit that 75%, or they're unable to meet that 75% threshold that we're looking at? Is there a clawback, an opt-out, or some other opportunity to say, okay, yeah, you didn't hit that number, we're still going to save some money, but now we're going to be paying more on the other side, so our savings goes down?
That is a very good question, and I think I just want to clarify a little bit. So the solar installation that is going into play, the 75% is 75% of that total array that's going in will be dedicated to Oakland County. Which and also means that 75% of our total energy, electricity use specifically, would be from that solar. They have clauses in there for requirements to provide that energy, and if something were to happen to that solar energy system, for example, that we still have a contract that they need to provide us with the electricity. So there's really no risk in having the available load for us to compensate for that. There would be an issue then of whether or not the entire portfolio of the energy would be coming from solar.
Okay.
Yep, if that makes sense.
The
Yeah.
price will remain the same.
Yeah, and the price is fixed.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Markham.
Yes, thank you. So just to clarify, our price will not go up in 10 years, our rate. Is that correct?
Correct. It is a fixed rate for what we would be engaging in. Energy prices will go up, right? So we will have to comply. The energy rates will go up with this new contract, but overall, the county would be still saving money compared to the market rate for the electricity.
Okay. We have talked at one time or another about putting solar on the county campus or on top of buildings and so on. Does this make more sense, or is that a component of what we're looking at, or, how do they relate?
That's a great question. So this would really help us in advancing our greenhouse gas and climate goals, and certainly still contribute to the reduction of costs that we have overall for electricity. We still have 25% of our energy that would be coming from the larger portfolio from what you would say for the grid, so components of natural gas, coal, nuclear, and additional renewable sources. And so that 25% still gives us the opportunity to offset some of that, whether that be on-site solar, whether that be additional programs as they come up. In addition to that, it's not just about saying, okay, cool, we're going to have this renewable energy source, but also making sure we're being more efficient. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of the CIP planning process and upgrades that we're doing in our facilities to make sure that we're actually reducing the amount of energy requirements and required use so that we can continue to have those efficiencies as well as implement new renewable energy sources. So it would still be considered as part of our overall energy portfolio and reductions.
Looking at it with an economic lens as to what makes the most sense.
Absolutely.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you very much. I think this is great. Anything that saves money and then puts us towards achieving our climate action goals is a winner. I think there's a recognition, and I had an opportunity, to talk to the team yesterday, because it's always this balance. Most of you know I've fought very hard to make sure that the contract comes before us, especially when it's a new contract to be reviewed. This one's unique and different because the negotiation, you basically have to enter into the contract when a rate is agreed to. And the mechanics of being able to know exactly what that rate is and to have the full contract doesn't work with a body unless we were all in the room at the same time and then took the vote instantly and signed off. And so that's why it's important. That authorizing the county to enter into this agreement and to put in some of the parameters that are listed in the first now therefore be it resolved clause that achieves everything that's been described: lower rates, to help move towards the higher renewable levels, to achieve our climate goals. My one question is who, and we said that authorizes the county to enter into the agreement. Who is the person who's actually going to sign it? Is it management and budget? I know. Is it facility?
I think we had some discussions. Has that been decided, Jody? We talked about purchasing at one point.
Would it be
Kyle?
pursuant to the purchasing policies and procedures?
Yes.
So that would be Scott Guzzi. He would sign it pursuant to the approved purchasing policies and procedures, just like every other,
Okay.
Motorola contract.
Okay.
For the radio system was signed by Scott,
But then maybe we should, after authorize the county per our purchasing policies and procedures to enter into and execute a contract. Would that be okay? Just add that?
I think we added that, right? It just says.
Well, it says it approves and authorizes the county to enter into.
Okay, I just added it later in the paragraph, the sentence there, but you can put it anywhere you want, it's fine. Moving on.
Yeah, it's in there.
Oh, it is?
Pursuant to the purchasing policy.
Oh, there it is. Never mind. Sorry, I didn't read beyond county.
Oh.
All right, never mind. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Whiteford.
Yeah, just to follow up that before my question, in the packet it has all the contracts. It's countywide. It's the road commission out on Duck Lake Road. It looked like it was everybody, parks and.
Yeah, I would say, would it be fair to say like 90% of our buildings are on the choice purchasing program? There are a few buildings that are outliers that are not, and that is more of the mechanics of the infrastructure that's available. But as many buildings that we have that are able to be part of that contract are part of that contract, so it is comprehensive for the county.
And when I was looking through those contracts, it listed everybody. So my question is, in that 75-25, our annual usage is 54 million kilowatts per hour, or whatever, so that as we get more efficient, as we maybe take down properties, and that's going to be in the 25%, right? The 75% is still going to come, or, I mean, it's all in the mix, but
Sure, yes.
there's still room
Correct.
for all of that. As we get more efficient, or we take down buildings, and we use a lot less electricity, it's not an issue, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Spiz.
I just have a technical question we can add in as amendment if we need to. But I'd like to get annual reports on this. I'd like
Okay.
to see and track the savings. Are we on track to save the taxpayer $12 million, or are we ahead, below? Hope we're ahead, but I think an annual report would be good for the energy usage.
Sure,
and the
great,
savings.
absolutely.
Great. Any other discussion?
So do we need to add that as amendment to the resolution? What do you think? Just to make sure it's.
Do you want to make that motion to
Yeah,
amend?
I'll make that motion.
All right, it's on the table to motion to amend, to have an annual report reported to the EDI
Yeah, so
committee.
we'll
All
add another B, further resolved.
right, it's been moved by Commissioner Spiz, seconded by Commissioner Cavell. Prompt the vote, please.
On the amendment?
On the amendment.
Quarterly reports for Sean, but only annual for Aaron?
You make no sense.
6 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Is any other discussion? The question I have is, where are these solar fields at?
There's 3 solar arrays that are going to be built in the state of Michigan. On the west side of the state is all that we're allowed to divulge right now.
Okay.
I have a field out there.
Nope,
I think close to being paid.
All right, so they're not built yet? Is that what you're saying?
correct.
Okay. I was just curious, yeah. Yeah, that's the only question I had. So if there's no other discussion as amended, we'll prompt the vote as the as amended amendment.
You have 6 yeas, 0 nays?
Motion carries. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time and waiting. Appreciate it.
We could have dropped
Thank
it 2 hours.
Yeah.
Move us to the front of the agenda for 9 minutes.
Right.
Do I hear a second?
All right, so there's no other further agenda items. We'll come to our next public comment. Anybody from the public looking to speak? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, we'll call the second public comment closed. We have other business. Any other business? No other business. We will call the meeting adjourned at 11:18.